Your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and on today's show, we are going to be celebrating and raising awareness for International Transgender Day of Visibility. Today's show, we'll be speaking with Ariel Taylor, who is the coordinator of our youth media program, and we're going to be presenting a film made by one of her students here at PhillyCAM that is about a trans person, and then we will be presenting a panel that occurred at the William Way Center last week. We'll talk about all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour on PhillyCAM TV and WPPM LP Philadelphia. We'll be right back. Hello, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour show. Again, I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and we're broadcasting live from PhillyCAM Studios in Center City on WPPM 106.5 FM and on PhillyCAM TV on Comcast and Verizon. Each month, we theme our People Power Lunch Hour shows, and this month, we decided to celebrate International Trans Day of Visibility, which is a holiday honored every year on March 31st. It's a time to celebrate transgender people around the globe and the courage it takes to live openly and authentically, while also raising awareness around the discrimination trans people still face. In this episode, we'll speak with my guest, Ariel Taylor. She is the coordinator of our youth media program here at PhillyCAM, and we'll be presenting a short film made by one of her students. And then later on in the show, we'll be presenting a panel that was recorded at the William Way Center celebrating Black History Month. It was presented by the Trans Masculine Advocacy Network. And it was a multi-generational panel discussion featuring some of the city's most influential trans pioneers of all ages. Hello, Ariel. Welcome to the show.
Hey,
Vanessa. Well, thank you for joining us here today, and we're really excited to present some of the work of your students. You've been working hard with them in the last couple of years to make all kinds of really interesting TV, film, photography, and now radio.
Yeah.
So for folks that don't know about our youth media program, tell us a little bit about the program and the kind of youth that are participating.
Yeah. So the youth media program runs here at PhillyCAM, typically like 3 to 4 days a week, and the hours are 2 to 6 p.m. And the youth media program is specifically based in media literacy, and so we basically teach students how to read and decode the media. And so we're having very real conversations about social justice topics like related to race and sexual identity, gentrification. We talk about a slew of different things, but based in like youth culture and from their perspective. And so the students have a weekly television show that airs on Friday here at PhillyCAM called Youth Powered Media, which is what Tara's piece was seen in one of the episodes. And students learn the same way that the adults learn. They learn start to finish how to produce, write, and produce pieces for television and radio. And we try to make I try to make the space also really welcoming and inclusive for the students so that we're able to create really thoughtful pieces that speak to how they see themselves and how like they want to be seen in the world. And I think that through that process of learning how to edit, learning how to communicate your ideas visually, a lot of really interesting pieces come out.
That's really great. So students apply for that program, and you try to select a diversity of students from different walks of life with different experience.
Yeah, absolutely. one of my real goals is always trying to get students from across the city. And so when we go through the application process, I'm constantly looking to make sure that we have students from the Northeast, that we have students from Southwest, and then also making sure that I ask students how they identify, what are their gender pronouns, making sure that if students are willing to offer that information, like have they experienced any kind of traumatic experiences in their life. These are all ways that kind of help me shape the program to fit their needs, and also to just be aware. I think that a lot of times too, like in educational spaces, we're working in larger groups, and I think that the great thing about PhillyCAM is I have the opportunity to have more of a one-on-one a relationship with students, and from that one-on-one relationship, it really strengthens the creation of the media that they produce. And I think just in general, we all need to be working really hard on dealing with people and working with people and seeing people on a one-to-one basis, just across the board on a lot of different issues. I think that a lot of times too, we tend to think about youth, we tend to think about race, we tend to think about gender identities in a very monolithic way. And so being able to work with a student and be able to like see them and talk to them about the issues that they're going through on a one-to-one basis really expands that.
So you and I talked earlier about how awesome a lot of our youth are here because they're so creative and interesting, and they have a lot of new ideas that we aren't necessarily exposed to in our generation. What are some of the things that students have taught you, and what have you taken away from, interacting with them and watching them grow and learn?
Yeah. Well, I definitely know a lot more Philly rappers than I've ever known in my entire life. I still say McNeil really wrong, and the students laugh at me all the time. But besides that, I think, gender pronouns, like I identify as queer. And in the spaces that I have moved in and existed in, I didn't know about pronouns. I just recently learned about pronouns probably like 3 years ago, and I've been actively working to integrate that into my life, and trying to not make assumptions about anyone's gender. And so I had a student 3 years ago, or it might have been 2 years ago now, that identified and used they, them pronouns. And so when that happened, and when I found out that those are the pronouns that they used, I really wanted to make sure that the space was inclusive. I think that too, sometimes when you are already a disenfranchised, a marginalized person, I think that it can be really hard for you to take on knowing that you've disenfranchised or marginalized someone else. And so it was really difficult for me to know that I wasn't using this person's pronouns correctly, for me to even know that I didn't even know about this. And this is something that someone is coming to me, and I'm like, I'm wide open. I'm trying to make sure that all my students feel seen and respected and appreciated. And so that was a really, really difficult couple weeks for me, when I was just like, this is so new to me. And I don't want you to feel, any more disrespected than I might have already made you feel, because I'm sure you feel disrespected on a daily basis. And I know what that feels like, to not be seen, to not be heard. And so after that happened, I was like, I need to get it together. Not only for me, but like for the space. Like this is obviously something that's important. And why isn't it? Why wouldn't it be important to be seen? So, So when that happened, I made sure that I tried to start educating myself about pronouns, and now it's an active part of our classroom experience, is that students come in, we talk about what gender pronouns are, we talk about how people self-identify, we talk about how we don't want to make any assumptions about anyone's gender. We talk about just a lot of different systems of oppression and systems that have maybe taught us to think about gender in a way where it's male and female, and that there is not this spectrum, and there's not this there's not a lot of visibility for people who are non-binary even. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that.
So let's talk a little bit about that. For our listeners and viewers out there that are unfamiliar with these terms, that's okay. That's why we're here today, People Power Lunch Hour. We want to share the knowledge that we've also learned, not just from youth, but from our members, in how to make our spaces more inclusive, more accessible, and how to properly identify people. So the first thing you talked about were gender pronouns and how we use them to properly identify people. I think a lot of people might just take that for granted, because they might be somebody who is what we call cisgender, somebody who, feels the way that they are biologically made and expresses themselves that way. But there's a lot of people in between and express themselves in many different ways. When somebody asks for your gender pronouns, what do they mean?
Just how do you identify? It's just that simple.
So if you have a name tag or something, a lot of times if you're in a group setting, now you see it a lot on email signatures. I think people are doing that to also show solidarity with the trans community. And it simply means if you identify as a she or a her, you write that, or him or his, and they or them. And then there's also like Z and some other varieties as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that people identify. And I think the main thing is just not to assume and to ask. That's it. And I think that crosses the board again on a lot of different issues, right? Of just like not assuming, not stereotyping, and I think too, like being part of this space here at PhillyCAM, we actually have the opportunity to break down a lot of stuff that people come in here with, and it's a really refreshing space to come into, to know that you're going to be called, you're going to be seen, and you're going to be referred to as the person who you are, Yeah,
it's really important, especially in public spaces. And as PhillyCAM strives to like model the world that we wish to see, I think that it's important that we, have a cultural shift, right? Which is what it requires. The first time I learned about gender pronouns and trans inclusivity was at the Allied Media Conference in Detroit, which is a national conference of media makers, artists, activists, and many other people who do movement-based work. And one of the first things is when you sign in and they give you your name tag, they ask what your gender pronouns are, so it's displayed prominently. And if it's a small, intimate class setting or a panel, they start off with properly identifying people or asking people if they want to be identified. And then they also have gender neutral bathrooms. And so seeing that for the first time, I was like, wow, like that's really cool and interesting. And it's not really hard at all to, make those changes in your space. So Ariel and I are here to tell all of you, if you have a program, if you work in education, if you work with youth, especially, that this is a great opportunity to have these types of conversations with people. Do you think youth in general are more accepting, more open, more tolerant when it comes to gender fluidity and gender expression?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think that there's hope. I think that they constantly remind me that you might think one way today, and the next day you might learn some things and you can think a completely different way. Versus, like, I feel like a lot of adults, we have grown up in this, in our society that makes us believe that this is what this is and this is it. And I think that a lot of youth are more, I guess they're more open to thinking things through and questioning things. I think that a lot of adults are scared to question things for a lot of reasons. And so Yeah, I think that there's a lot of hope, and I think that they're really eager, and like really pushing to be respected. I think that that's more than anything. It's, using someone's correct gender pronouns is like, it's like, hey, I see you, I respect you, I'm here, and I think that they're constantly pushing to be respected and feel valued. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. They inspire me, that's for sure. One of the other questions I want to ask you about is how do you hold people accountable? And you use a Brave Spaces agreement. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the Brave Space agreement, in a lot of different educational spaces, it's used. And so I kind of pieced the Brave Space agreement together from a lot of different institutions. I wish I could list them all, but I can't. But the sum of it is that we're really trying to break down a lot of systems of oppression. And so in our space, we don't tolerate ageism, we don't tolerate sexism, we don't tolerate bias against folks who are disabled, so ableism. And when we go through the Brave Space agreement, I have the students sign it, and I have the students, we break down and really go into when are times that you have experienced racism, and what does that look like, and how did that make you feel? When are times that maybe an older person that you might know has experienced ageism, and what does that look like? Do you know what these names, these words are? I think that a lot of the students also struggle with misogyny. And so we have a lot of conversations around that too, but there's a bunch of different systems of oppression that we kind of talk about.
So if you want more information, you can hit up Ariel at PhillyCAM.org and tell us quickly now about Tara's film, which we're going to present right now.
Yeah, Tara's film is about her friend Riley, who uses they, them pronouns. They're Taiwanese. They're really super cool. The video is amazing. Tara edited it and filmed it. And Riley is in the tech world. And so Tara kind of goes through, and it's really like Riley leading the conversation, and they're just talking about their experience of being a Taiwanese Asian American, and how a lot of times their family doesn't understand gender pronouns, and how they feel a lot of times that they can't share their full self with their family. And so I think that that's a real big takeaway that I've gotten out of that, because I think that, again, I try to make sure that in our space, the kids really bring their full selves, and that can mean a lot of different things. That includes trauma, that includes having a really crappy day, that includes all the good and bad. And I think it was really hard for me to watch it and hear that they aren't able to share some of their biggest moments with their family. So.
All right, Ariel, thank you for your work and for spreading the knowledge. Check out this great film by Tara, one of our former youth media students. And then later on, after that, you're going to be watching the panel hosted by the Trans Masculine Advocacy Network, a multi-generational panel discussion featuring the city's most influential trans pioneers of all ages, here on the People Power Lunch Hour. Stay tuned.
My name's Riley, I'm 22, and I use they, them. I'm a non-binary Taiwanese American person. I'm somewhere on the asexual spectrum. I'm pan. I think about a year ago I started to embrace the non-binary identity, and then this past year I've started to associate myself more with the trans community, so I now would say that I'm non-binary and trans. I don't know if my parents really understand the queer community, just in general, and I don't know, and I really doubt that they understand the trans community, or even understanding the concept of being non-binary. Yeah, and not to necessarily say that they just are ignorant or anything like that, but just that they grew up with a certain set of values and ways of thinking, and those frameworks that they have grown up using and continue to use are different than the ones that I use. It's just kind of a challenge to be able to communicate, because I think for me, identity has a lot of links to my mental health, and within my parents' culture, mental illness is not something that even acknowledged or recognized as a real illness. And so I think all these things kind of are pretty intertwined with regards to me not feeling like I could be my whole self around my parents. So just like in general, I feel like that relationship has been really stunted because there's so little that I can share about my life. Things that are so core to my day-to-day have to do with these things that my parents don't consider valid. And so in general, I think that has really like hurt my relationship with my parents. I think it's a misconception that like you have to look androgynous necessarily. You can be presenting femme or masc or like anywhere or like outside of that, and that doesn't invalidate like your identity as a non-binary trans person. There was a certain point where I found it frustrating that a lot of people typically didn't use my pronouns, especially because my name that was given to me at birth sounds feminine and is like associated as like a woman's name. And so for me, changing my name to something that was like closer to being less gendered, I think helps a lot more with affirming that my pronouns are they, them. And so for me, not only was it the exposure to the non-binary community in general, but also specifically non-binary Asian Americans made me realize like this is someone that I can become in a sense, like with regards to like being able to transition towards something. So I started a Facebook group called Cutie Pot Tech Friends. It's for queer and/or trans people of color in tech. There are all these communities for women in tech that are predominantly like white women in tech. There tends to be like communities for queer and trans people, but it's also like pretty white dominated. For a lot of cutie pot in tech, you might go through your career not meeting anyone else who like belongs to that group. I think just knowing that this group exists and like is here for you and that you're not alone, I think for them just like being a part of it and knowing it's there by itself can be like pretty powerful.
We are so much more than the terrible things that happen to us, and so much more than what the systems of oppression, the oppressors, and society tell us and reinforce about us. Today, we remind ourselves of our power, worthiness, and divinity that fortify us in the collective. Ancestors, you have sown so we might reap. You have fought for our peace, you invented our culture, gained our rights so we be free. All the things that we take for granted once were won by sweat and toil. Gucci, Niza Morris, Erica Keels, Stacey Blahnik, Kyra Cordova, Diamond Williams, Keisha Jenkins, Maya Young, London Chanel, Shantae Tucker, Jackie Adams, Charlene Arcilla, Gloria Caceres, Christopher Collins, Donald Carter. Let us honor you by using well your gifts to us. Ancestors, let our lives shine forth your works. May we keep and feed your living flame. Ashe. Ashe. Before we begin, this event will tolerate no transphobia, no homophobia, no racism, no colorism, no sexism, no femphobia, no Islamophobia, no fatphobia, and no hate will be tolerated at this event. Folks will be asked to leave if any of these rules are violated. If anyone sees anything concerning, please notify myself or a volunteer. Welcome to the 3rd annual Philly Black Trans History Panel. Yes. This event is a celebration of Black trans resilience and Black trans magic. It is an opportunity for residents, community members, and allies, accomplices, to learn about Philadelphia's Black trans history, past and present, as well as our hopes and dreams for the future. I want to give a special thanks to William Way and Chris Bartlett, Razor's Cuisine, Philly Family Pride, Morris Home, and the Trans Masculine Advocacy Network. Let's welcome our panelists with a warm round of applause. Oh, for those who don't know, my name is Christian Love Hall. So I'm gonna introduce our panelists. So first we have Tori. Tori is a 28 years old trans woman, has already done so much in the health and prevention field. After working 3 years with the School District of Philadelphia, teaching dance pertaining to math and science, she decided to expand her work into the LGBT community, where she saw a great need for trans-identified youth and LGBTQ children alike. She then began her work at Colors organization, and while there she started working with Posse, where she helped give feedback on community outreach and prevention in the ballroom community. Now she is currently at CHOP, working as a clinical research assistant with the AI team on trans prep. Welcome, Tori. Next to Tori, we have Aidan. Aidan Williams is a Black trans advocate, speaker, educator, and activist. Aidan is a trans masculine non-binary North Philadelphia native. Since 2011, they have made it a personal passion to advocate for LGBTQ people of color, in addition to advocating for Black lives, Black feminism, Muslim Americans, comprehensive sexual education, and youth. They have presented at Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference, Young People for Change, National Youth Summit, and Advocates for Youth Urban Retreat. They have been facilitating trainings on transgender inclusion at psychiatric facilities and LGBTQ student inclusion at Philadelphia schools. Welcome, Aidan. Next we have DJ Delish, also known as Khadijah Rose. Khadijah Rose is a DJ, rapper, songwriter, producer, and dancer from Philadelphia. She's been most noted for her DJing style of preaching and her preaching style of spinning, transcending inspiration through various blends and transitions. She's DJ'd for Faith Evans, Jungle, Naeem Jawan, Dream Doll, and more. On top of her working with these people, her home in the ballroom scene has always showcased through the musical talents, having been a now mainstream ballroom DJ for the past 7 years through the House of Ebony and the Kiki House of Gabbana. Welcome. Next we have Rob Thornton, is that Louisville, Kentucky native, and has lived in Philadelphia for the past several years. He is finishing his finance degree at Temple University and is a senior investment operations analyst. He is very passionate about financial literacy within the LGBTQ and Black community. His long-term goal is to be an investment manager for an endowment fund for emerging transgender needs. Rob has made strides to address transgender needs in corporate America, including assisting with HR transgender policies with his employer. He is a member of TMAN, and board member of Delaware Valley Legacy Fund. Rob will also be getting married to this beautiful lady up here in the front, Kiki. And last but not least, mother, elder, all of that, my auntie, Andrea Lamour-Harrington. Andrea is a community activist who has been serving the LGBT community population for over 20 years. Her strong love and commitment to people, many of whom cannot speak for themselves, has contributed to her reputation as being a voice for the people of her community. Andrea is the mother of the House of Lamour, which she proudly calls her Rainbow Tribe. Presently, Andrea is employed as a field coordinator with the City of Philadelphia, working on the HIV behavior surveillance team. Welcome, panelists. Yes, so we have a few questions to ask our amazing panelists. And then hopefully if we have some time, I will open up the floor for a few questions from the audience. Is that cool with everybody? Okay. So I'm not gonna go in order, so y'all ain't gonna know who I'm gonna talk to first. So be ready, all right? All right. So first I'm gonna go to Aidan. Yes, you gotta start with the youth, you know what I'm saying? So Aidan, in your bio you talked a lot about trans youth and education. What are some policy changes you would like to see occur in the city and state for trans youth, especially trans students?
Is this? All right, cool. So first, I would like a non-discrimination clause for trans youth. There's a clause that protects youth for their sexuality in schools, but there's none that protects them, protects gender identity or gender expression. So I would like that to be passed as a statewide level as well, and also in Philadelphia schools to update or just like look at, make sure that policy 252 is being utilized in schools, because it's been passed since 2016, but not a lot of schools are using it, which this policy says that, youth can use their preferred name, pronouns without a legal name change. They can use restrooms and bathrooms that goes with their gender identity and expression. And it says that teachers need to be trained about these policies at least once a year. So I would like that policy to be more enforced. It's around, but not really. Schools are not really enforcing it. Schools are just like, not really like receiving trainings about transgender youth in school. So I would like, that policy to be updated. I would like to be enforced, and I would like to be a non-discrimination clause that protects trans youth and statewide, not just like cities, because there are a lot of rural LGBT youth that we're not talking about. In the state of PA, we only have Pittsburgh, we only have Philly, we have all these resources in the city, but there's that in between where we're not talking about, we're not reaching, especially for LGBT people of color, to be in a rural area and not know anyone that's around your sexuality or your gender or your race. So my goal is to kind of like bridge that gap between the city and rural areas in PA.
Thank you. What is some advice you have for youth who are medically and/or socially transitioning in grade school and high school?
That all transition is valid no matter. There are a lot of youth who, because you're not 18, you cannot go on hormones, you can't do that. So people think that, if you're socially transitioning without any hormones or anything like that your transition is not valid or your trans is not valid. So I would be like in any stage of transition, no matter if you just came out to yourself, it's still valid. And I will also like don't feel pressure to even medically transition, don't feel pressure to like go on your transition for your transition. It's your process, it's a very personal thing. It is hard, it could be hard sometimes, and you're trying to on the inside be who you are on the outside, and folks don't really like that freedom. So it can be hard, but know that there are resources, there's community, there's chosen family, and of course there's me.
Thank you. So next, who's next? Tori. Hey. So, what inspired you to be involved in the ballroom community?
Well, this is not working. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. I don't know. I just kind of like it. I just like the way that everybody in the community were able to freely express themselves. It gave me an outlet that I didn't know that I needed. So once I attended my first ball or whatever, I saw people being able to freely express themselves. I kind of go, and it kind of gave me a door. It opened up a door that I didn't even know was closed. So the more I ventured out, the more I found friends, the more I saw people opening. I was like, oh, well, I actually like this. Like, this is something that I would like to do. And through that, it kind of like just helped me. So that was kind of the inspiration, just being there, being a part of it.
Cool. So what are a few misconceptions you'd like to clear up about the ballroom scene? Just a few.
That it's not all negative. The biggest misconception is that it's like this big negative thing, that it's like this swarming cesspool of like sex and drugs, and like people are just like, once you get in there, they're just ready to latch on and bring you down. There's a lot of very, very, very positive people in ballroom, and ballroom actually created a lot of people that you see in the industry today. Ballroom created a lot of designers, models. I mean, as it becomes more mainstream, you see people, but their roots are in ballroom. They find their talents, they perfected their talents. You have people like Jason Bowman, who started doing makeup like early on and did some makeup in the, you know, in the community. You have people like, you know, designers. You have people who become supermodels, like, what's her name, Milan Child, Lena, you know, like the list goes on and on. So it breeds a lot of excellence along with, like, so there's a lot of good and bad that goes with everything, but there's a lot more good in the ballroom scene than a lot of people know. So.
And one more. You were on Pose, right?
Yeah.
How was that experience, being on Pose?
That was one of the best experiences for me. It was kind of eye-opening to know that I can be seen as a person. Like, that was the most important thing for me, to be seen for, well, you know, what I was and, you know, who I am and not what I am. You know, I didn't have to identify as anything. I didn't have to walk in there and say, oh, I'm this, and this, and this. Like, they saw me like, hey, excuse me, you're pretty, you're beautiful. I think you can do this. Could you come with me? You know, and it didn't just stop. It didn't just have to do with LGBTQ things. It didn't have to do with trans things. It didn't have to do with anything non-binary. They just wanted you. So that just let me know that, like, it helped me to let other people know. You know, if you want to do something, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what place you identify with, no matter how you identify, you're still a person. And if you walk in there and you put your talents forward and you present people with yourself, they have nothing else to do but accept you for who you are and not what you are.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yes. So next up we have DJ Delish. Ooh.
Hello.
Hey. So what inspires you to be a DJ?
Honestly, I would have to say ballroom. Ballroom kind of came to me so much. It came to me so fast. I saw so many categories. And at the time, I didn't see myself in these categories, but one thing that I did see myself doing and evolving in was the music. The music wrapped me in as soon as I started listening to it. And from listening to Vaughn and Mike Q and DJ the DJ and all these people, it just transferred over to me. Plus, my dad has like been a DJ for like 20 years or so. So like, I think it's in the blood. But yeah, that ultimately is what inspired me to be a DJ, is like, just seeing these people move in such a way that was so in tune with the music. It was almost as if the music and the movement were being created live at that moment, simultaneously. It's so magical. So I think that's you know, really the main thing that inspired me to be a DJ. Plus, really good music. You just constantly want to hear it all the time. So.
Shit, I want a DJ. Shit. Okay, so I've been seeing, you know, some posts from you on Facebook, so that's what prompted this question. What are a few misconceptions you'd like to clear up about Black trans women? Just a few.
One, that we're not angry. 99.9% of us are fed up. And it shows, I see so many videos and things that float across the internet, and it's all this, on top of the misgendering, there's so many misunderstandings as to what you see a trans woman going off about, or what you see her going through. And people are quick to attack her aggression and quick to throw her out because of that, as they do with Black women, period. But, okay, but because that's not the case, and we're not angry, we're not mad, we're fed up, and I think that the most common misconception is that we're always walking around with a chip on our shoulder. And the second thing that I feel like is a main misconception is that we all want to pass. And go self or be the realest of the real, and there are so many women, especially black women, especially in Philly, that come in so many different shapes and sizes. My mother has a mustache. My grandmother's voice is the same tone of mine, and these are still women. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's something else that people constantly see with black trans women is that, because we're black, we have to try a little harder on every forefront. So, especially on the trans level, you think, oh, well, honey, she wants to just pass, she wants to be the realest. And in reality, we want to be comfortable. We want to be able to walk into places and be a woman. And that's that. And that's be the end of that conversation. It doesn't have to be a back and forth about our pronouns. So that's 2 out of the 1,000,
Right. And one more question. What is something that you are thankful for?
This moment. To be honest, the fact that I'm sitting here and talking to black trans people who live in this city with me, who look like me, who are me, and I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for the fact that y'all want to hear what I have to say, that we are being heard all around. So, yeah.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Yes, I'm sure. All right. Andrea. Hey, she don't need no mic. She don't need no mic. So, you are a spiritual leader, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, what are some challenges you have faced being trans and a spiritual leader?
I'll start by letting you know a story. I showed up at a funeral for my aunt. And my aunt that was handling all of the funeral arrangements and everything, she asked me to read the old scripture. At a funeral somebody reads the old scripture, somebody reads the new scripture, and solos and so forth and so forth. Well, she asked me to read the old scripture out of the Old Testament. As I went to go ask the reverend that was running the officiating that day, I went to ask him something about the program or something, and I explained who I was. But of course, my family, in good fashion, as the Harringtons will do, they didn't put me in as Andrea Lamour-Harrington. They had me in the program as Michael Anthony Lopez. Yes, I don't mind nobody knowing my old name, because how about this? My mother gave it to me and I accept it. But that's not who I was. So this reverend, when he sees that I'm supposed to be Michael Anthony Lopez, but I'm standing here in clergy attire, a dress, with my collar on, he snatches the Bible out of my hand and says, never mind. That right there was it could have been a moment. And for anybody that knows me, I don't use the word because of color. I use the word because of the definition that is in Webster's dictionary for the word. I was getting ready to let have. But I said to myself, this is one of those opportunities and one of those battles that you're not going to fight. This is your aunt's funeral. This is not one of those times. But the negativity just in the fact of me being trans, and this man snatched a Bible out of my hand to infer that I was not good enough to read a scripture. Just the simple reading of a scripture, it peed me off. But at that moment, it wasn't the time for me to fight. But I kept on living because I wasn't going to give him the benefit of watching me crumble. At that moment or any moment after that. Amen? Amen.
Thank you. So that was a challenge, right? So what's a pro? What's something good that you've found by being a trans spiritual leader?
That's a good one. And I'll tell you, honestly, in all honesty, this week, I gained the answer to that question. A pro. I don't know if you know, it's a gospel singer by the name of Andrea Johnson. She is the 3rd season winner for Sunday's Best. But she's known as the bad girl of gospel because she don't take no mess. And like me, she will cuss you out from A to Z, a-hole to appetite, and stand firmly on it, and then go and start singing her gospel song. Well, one of the pros is, in watching her, I understood where I was coming from because I saw someone almost like me. No, she wasn't trans, but I don't live my life as a trans woman. I live my life as a woman. And I identified with the fact that this woman, as a gospel singer, will walk into a neighborhood of prostitutes, will walk into a neighborhood of drunk people, will walk into a crack house, and she will speak to that crack addict the same way she'll speak to Bishop T.D. Jakes. That's a pro about me being a trans woman that happens to be a minister of God's word. I don't give a darn what station in life you may have. I'm coming to you. Not only just to say hello, but to let you know that somebody identifies with you, someone loves you, and so does God. And by me being in that position and not trying to disclude anyone, people draw to me just as a person. Has nothing to do with me being trans, has nothing to do with the fact that I'm Blaxican, has nothing to do with the fact that I have a good mouthpiece. It's all because I let my light shine so that somebody that's in a dark tunnel can see their way out.
Thank you. I have one more question, Andrea. As an elder, what is some advice you have for young Black trans women in the city?
Can I make a correction on that?
Go ahead.
And I gotta stand up for this one. Y'all forgive me. I'm used to preaching, so preacher don't sit down and preach. Amen. So y'all forgive me. But I'd like to add something to that. This is not just for Black trans women. This is not just for Black trans men. This is for anyone who is in transition. It is very easy to listen to the world when they tell you you ain't shit. Yes, I said it. It is very easy to listen to the world when they tell you that. But what is even easier is for you to allow them to have their opinions and their thoughts. Just like everybody got an a-hole, everybody got an opinion. But as my late sister Jackie Adams used to say, it's not the name that you're called, baby, it's the name that you answer to. So if you become confident in who you are, if you become more worried about your relationship with God and the universe than what everybody else feels and thinks matters not. And the road ahead of you will have a lot less bumps in it if you pay more attention to where you going than where people think you going.
Thank you, Andrea. What's up, bro? How your nerves feeling? They getting a little better? I'll put you last. What did you do to warm up? How you feeling? That's a question. You alright? Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay. He alright, y'all. He alright. So, Rob, why do you think it's important for Black trans men to be visible?
As he said, I'm extremely nervous. Anxiety is on like 1,000 right now. So if I'm stumbling over my words or you kind of getting lost what I'm talking about, I apologize up front. So first and foremost, I think that it's important for trans men to be visible because of this very moment. When I got to this table, like I said, my nerves were shot. And I looked over to my left and I introduced myself. This is the first time I met her. And she said, don't worry about being afraid of who you are. Just be afraid of being phony. And it made me laugh, and it calmed me down, you know. And then just listening to you now, just put a huge impression on me. And it's like being visible. If I wasn't visible, I wouldn't even be able to experience the love of my elders, or the love in this room, or looking at the people in this room. So that number one is the reason why it's so important to be visible. The other reason is, you know, I think back on my transition of 7 years of isolation. I moved to Philadelphia from Kentucky, and it was just me by myself. I would feminize myself when I went back home, and I would masculinize myself when I came back to Kentucky, and back and forth, back and forth. I didn't have TMAN, I didn't have William Way, I didn't have Mazzoni, I wasn't on T or anything. I was just trying to figure it out the best way I knew how. Instead of going on the internet to buy a binder, I would duct tape my chest. Like, I would do everything, I guess, it was the best way I knew how, but it was very hurtful mentally and physically. I mean, I had sores on my chest from the duct tape just being so tight around my chest. So it's just doing everything wrong. And I think that, you know, being visible, you make yourself accessible to the support that you need. It's so important that you're around love and support, especially being a trans person, period. So I think that it's very important. And then once you become visible, you have to think about those moments that you had, and that the fact that what you're experiencing now, someone went through hell to allow me to have these moments where I can get to you. I have access to healthcare. Someone went through that for me. So it's only right that I do the same for the youth. Like, I would never want someone to go through the things that I've gone through and the things that my elders have gone through. So it's like the decision to transition was a life or death situation for me. And for me to be visible and to help, that's a life or death decision for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, what are some misconceptions you'd like to clear up about Black trans men?
I guess misconceptions for Black trans men, and this is from my experience. I can't speak to everyone else's experience. These are from, I guess, personal conversations I've had with people within the community and outside of the community. One thing is, a lot of people think that trans men of color don't experience the same traumas and social experiences as cisgender men. You know, prior to transitioning, I didn't have certain experiences with law enforcement. Yeah. I didn't have, like, I mean, I knew of that. You know, it's always a narrative that's in our community, but like, I started to notice that things happen more frequently to me once I started to present as a man of color, you know, and it was just very, like, it's one of those things, like, when it happens to you, you're just like, you know in that moment why it's happening. And I think that a lot of people think that, you know, trans men, like, they associate, like, oh, they get a pass. No, we experience those same, well, not exactly, but we experience similar experiences. And I think that by saying that, like, that we have those experiences, people need to know, because, I mean, I feel that the Black community stand behind Black men. I think that you know, there's not a lot of support with Black gay men, but there is some support. But I think that by not acknowledging that trans men of color experience those same type of things, we don't have the support. So what happens, like, you know, when we have that run-in with law enforcement, who do we go to? You know, if people don't even know that we have those experiences to begin with. You know, so I think it's important to clear up that misconception. Also, I think that, you know, the way society boxes men of color into this little corner is like, this is what you need to be. And if you're anything outside of that parameter, then something's wrong with you. I think that they do the same thing to us as well. Like, I know tons of trans guys that, you know, they show different type of masculinity, different type of, they may be feminine, you know, but the moment that you're a trans guy and you show feminine behavior, then you're automatically like, oh no, well then something's wrong with him. It's like, we're not free, just like black men aren't free to be themselves. I feel that, you know, we both have those same type of experiences of being oppressed and just be who we are.
Thank you. One more question, Rob. So, when I was reading your bio, I mentioned that you were getting married this summer, right? I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna be there, y'all. I'm real sharp.
TMAN in the house.
Yes. So how has being engaged and becoming a future husband affected your view on love and family?
To be honest with you, it changed my life. It saved my life, you know. I couldn't even fathom even being someone's anything, you know. I just wanted to belong to somebody, and I was thinking that it was probably gonna be like my cats or my dogs, to be quite honest with you. So like, you know, once I realized that it's possible to have love, like the amount of love I've experienced with Kiki, like it's like, wow, it was like a sense of faith and like a source of happiness. Is like, this is real, you know, because I had given up on love. Like I realized that like as a child, I was like, I always wanted to be married and I wanted to have a family, but I was like, am I just gonna be a closeted wife? You know, and you know, is that what my life is gonna be? I'm gonna have this deep, dark secret that I can't express to my significant other? And I you know, I was like, that's either gonna be the cats or that, you know what I mean, to be honest with you. But, you know, once I realized that, you know, love was possible, it kind of changed my life, to be honest with you. Like, it's actually real, and like, a trans person can be happy. A trans person can be in love. A trans person can have a healthy, non-toxic relationship, you know? And I think that the next step out of that is like, because for me, I didn't know what a transgender person that's married, they're not, like they're out there, but I feel that they're not accessible to us. So it's up to me and my future wife to show what a loving transgender person, you know, a person that's trans in a relationship and how that looks, you know what I mean? We have to make sure that we're being accessible to the community. So to answer your question, I kind of rambled on, I apologize, but like, you can be in love and you can be trans.
Thank you. Give our panelists warm applause. Thank you. So, we're getting to the end of this panel, but before we do so, I want to make a couple announcements and bring somebody up on stage after announcements. So, we will be having a donation jar up here. And the funds will be going to TMAN. You know, it takes funds to make this happen. So we want to make sure that this event continues next year. So any donation is greatly appreciated. So with that said, I would like to welcome Marcus on stage to close out the panel.
Ew, hey y'all. I thought I was gonna do this in the beginning, so it's a little bit much, you know. Yeah, so my name is Marcus James. I'm 23, I'm from Philadelphia. I am a singer and a chef, and I'm local, I'm here. I've been coming here for 3 years. I think I've been here since the beginning. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, I've been here since the beginning of the Black Trans panel. I'm also very grateful to be like listening to you today, all of you, in all of your respects. As you noticed, I gave them roses in the beginning. You know, give us our roses while we're alive, not when we're dead. So that was signified. I want to say that for Christian. And I'm just gonna sing the Black National Anthem real quick. If y'all want to join in, y'all can do that. Please rise. Thank you. I was about to go ahead and Black Baptist Church y'all real quick. Please rise for the ending here. Consider this the blessing of the food now. Yeah, playing games.
2 and 1.
All right. I know, I'm a jokester, I'm sorry. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get serious right now because I'm a little nervous. It's not just you, Rob, trust me. All right. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you, guys. Bless the food, bless the meat, everybody, let's eat. Yes. Enjoy the food and eat, y'all. Thank you for coming.